Good morning. It's August 25th. I can't believe August is almost over. That means the summer's almost over. Labor Day, September has the traditional start of the fall, but it's not quite fall yet. But welcome to Dynamic Dialogue. Today we're going to talk about building and maintaining supplier trust. So we'll jump into that in just a second. This is open to supply chain professionals. Anybody interested in supply chain activities, whether it's now, pre-COVID, during COVID, after COVID, all of the above. We're going to do a short presentation. We'll keep it less than an hour, and then we'll open it for questions or comments. This link will be the same one that we use for September. So if you are a subscriber, then this link will be the same, and you'll still get a reminder every Tuesday before the meeting starts. So thanks all of you for attending live, and thank all of you who follow up and view these on your own time. Boy, I'm having some troubles this morning. So let's talk about trust. Trust is both a noun and a verb, and I always look at a word from the dictionary perspective because I want to say, what does this really mean? So if you look at trust, it talks about assured reliance on character, ability, strength, and truth of someone or something. In this case, when we talk about suppliers, it's between a supplier and a customer. It's also one, which is a person or a organization or both, in which confidence is placed. And that means confidence not in, yes, I'm confident I can do this, but it's putting your things that are important to you, things that may be sensitive, things that maybe aren't public knowledge. So it's putting things that are valuable to you with another person or another organization. As a noun, it also indicates dependence on something future or contingent, and it has a connotation of hope associated with it. As a verb, trust means to rely on truth or accuracy, and we need to do that with our suppliers. We need to rely on them to be truthful and accurate with us. As a verb, it means where you place your confidence, placing that confidence in that person or that organization, and expecting the confidentiality that you would treat that accordingly, that you would give to the same item, to the same person, to the same situation, issue. So we have some expectations that we lay out in supply chain for suppliers. And you can see by this graphic that I put on there that expectations should be set pretty high. For that little fish to jump into a bigger bowl is a pretty big deal. And of course, this is not necessarily an actual fish performing this feat, but sometimes we feel like that we have to really go above and beyond, and we have to do better than we've ever done before. There's a commercial on TV where he's throwing treats to, I think it's a cat, and you think, okay, the cat's jumping, but then it turns out that he's or she is jumping over a floor. So the gentleman is on a deck on the second floor throwing these treats out. So that's quite a jump. That's quite a high expectation of performance. And that's what we want to do with our suppliers. We want to set the bar high. But as a supplier, you also want to set the bar high. You want to set your expectations with your customers high as well. So you can see that this doesn't say set and attain consistently high standards for suppliers. It says set and attain consistently high standards because it applies to both. And both entities have to nurture this relationship. This is not something that is just, oh, hi, how are you? That's great. We're going to be best friends for the next 3 years working on this project. You have to nurture the relationship. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of these in just a few minutes. You want to follow up and follow through. So this is what we expect in our personal lives and in our professional lives. We want people who are going to follow up, who are going to follow through, who are going to be there for us, who we can rely on. And when they say they're going to do something, they actually do it. So if you have children at home, children are notorious for not following up and following through because they haven't learned that yet. They haven't learned the importance. Yes, mom, I'll take out the trash. Yeah, I made my bed. So did they actually do that? Usually we check to make sure. And that's not a bad thing. So we want to instill this necessity, this expectation of following up and following through on what we say we're going to do and the actions that we take as we're working together with customers and suppliers. In order to trust, you need to be willing to share information. You need to be able to open up. You need to be willing to expose yourself, be vulnerable a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to do everything. And we'll talk about that. But you do have to put yourself in somewhat of a vulnerable situation in order to build that trust so that you can get the synergies that come from a relationship that is closer to a partnership than just a transactional relationship. And if you don't have vested interest in this relationship, if you are just buying something from a supplier that you can buy from 6 other suppliers, you don't really care how well they perform, because if they don't perform, you'll just boot them and take another one, then that's probably not the relationship with that supplier. That's probably not the supplier that you want to focus on. It's fine to have that because we do have relationships like that. And if this is just another customer who's a part of your customer base and you like them and you want to keep them as a customer, but they're not moving any needles in your company, they're not giving you 50% of your business or even a significant 15 or 20%, if they are just one more customer and you have hundreds of others that do the same thing, that buy as much as they do, and it's not really making an impact on your business, then again, this is probably not the relationship where you want to make that investment. But when you do have that supplier or that customer that's very important to you and your relationship as well as your company's relationship, then this is where you want to make sure that you're ready to make an investment and you're ready to make the commitment to build the trust to make this relationship work and make it flourish. So these high standards are very important. And this is foundational to building trust. So this ladder that in the picture goes up and up and up, and who knows how long it's going to keep going up. But this is what we want to establish as important. Because when you set high goals, high expectations, then that is, by virtue of just setting those expectations, you're indicating that you trust that person to listen to these and to have the ability and the willingness to try to achieve those with you. If you're talking to a supplier and they say, "Why are you telling me this?" then that's not the right supplier. And if your customer is telling you goals that they have that you don't see how you could help them achieve, then that's probably not the right relationship. So again, we're looking at building trust with key suppliers that are going to help move both of your businesses forward. So you want to understand who, what, where, when, and how much. As a supplier, you want to know exactly what your customer is expecting of you. As a customer, you want to convey all of the parameters, all of the specifications, all of the expectations that you have for that supplier so that they know what you need, so that you can actually attain that from them, and that the supplier knows what is needed from them so they can actually deliver it. So the supplier is going to focus a lot on customer service. They're going to focus on, what do I need to do to be a good supplier to my customer? What do I need to do to be responsive? How can I respond correctly? I don't want to drop everything every time they call, but I do want to convey to them that they are important, that they are a valued customer, and that they will get the service that they need as well as the goods. So they're going to get the goods, they're going to get the service, they're going to get all of the things that they need from me in a responsible, timely manner. And that means I have to show respect for the customer. Again, this is my customer who's actually paying me to do something, to give them a service, to deliver them goods. We have a business relationship. So there's a certain amount of respect that that relationship commands. And when you're trying to build trust, you want to amp that up a little bit and make sure that you both feel very respected in your roles. And the customer focus in this point has to be communication. Again, respectful communication, not you idiot supplier, you need to do XYZ, but this is what I need from my suppliers. This is where I'm going. This is how your company and your products and your services fit into this. And I want you to be a part of this success story. So you have to convey both needs and wants. You have to be specific about what is a need, what is an absolute, that if I don't get this, it's going to be detrimental to my product, my good, my service, to my customer, and the things that I'd really like to have. So this is where you start to build that trust, because when you share those wants, then the supplier gets an understanding of how they can be a better supplier, and they can give you things more over and above what other suppliers offer. So that's how they can differentiate themselves. And that's how they can solidify these relationships, by understanding those wants and being able to help you achieve as many of those as possible. You want to share and communicate all kinds of information. As a customer, you want to let your suppliers know what your sales expectations are, what their forecast is, what your actual sales are, what your point of sale information is. You want to give them as clear information as you can, as frequently and as real time as you can, so that they can help respond to what is going on with your business. If you're going to make design changes, assuming the customer owns it, which is not always the case, sometimes the supplier owns the design. And in that case, the premise still holds, the activity still holds to communicate and make sure that you know what the other party is doing in terms of that. Often it's the customer's design that changes that's going to affect what the supplier does. So when that is the case, then you want to make sure that you're very clear to that supplier what you want to do. Again, is it a need? Is it a want? How can they help you do this? How can they help you cut that in? How can they help you make sure that you don't end up with lots of extra inventory, rework, any kind of thing? So it's very, very important to communicate lots of detail on that. And also the desired quality level. Again, clear parameters, clear specifications. Not everything has to be of the highest quality, but it has to be high enough quality to meet or exceed the customer's customers. So when you're explaining this, when you're sharing this, you want to be clear about what is needed. If this is something that's very important to be low cost, then you may be willing to make some sacrifices in quality for that, in reliability, in durability, in whatever. So have those conversations, share that information. If this is something that's very important to your customer's quality, and between you and your customer, the quality is a very important part of that relationship, then you want to share that with your suppliers as well. If your customers' orders depend on your quality, then you should absolutely be sharing all of that detail, all of that pressure with your suppliers, because all of that has to work together for the goals to be achieved. I talked about nurturing the relationship. This is like nurturing a plant, or even a child. You want to bring that supplier on board. You want to welcome them into the fold if they're a brand new supplier. You want to make sure that they understand who's who. It's like bringing on a new employee. You want to make sure they understand what the expectations are, what the norms are, what the unwritten rules are, as well as what the written rules are. You want to make sure they know who's who. I remember very early in my career, I was working for a factory. I had an internship when I was in college, and I had a desk out on the floor, and I knew who my boss was, and I knew a couple other people. I hadn't been there very long, just a couple of weeks, and I was out on the floor with the desk. It was pretty open air. People stopped by all the time to talk, and one day a gentleman in a suit jacket stopped by, and I talked to him. He asked me how things were going. He did not introduce himself, which I kind of say, I'm not sure I understand why, but I was polite. I was grateful for being there. I'm appreciative of the job, told him how much I liked being there and working with the people. When he left, one of the supervisors came over and said, "What did he want?" And I said, well, tell me who he is. And he said, he's the general manager. I said, oh, that's good to know. I didn't know he was the big cheese in the place. I had not met him yet. Like I said, I'd only been there a couple of weeks, but he was checking on me. He didn't bother to introduce himself, but you need to know who's who so that you don't make a mistake. If I had asked him a stupid question or made a comment that I didn't like something just because I didn't know who he was and I was being not paying attention, I was trying to nurture my relationship with the company being very new. And he was trying to nurture the relationship with this new college kid that came on board for the summer and stayed for 2 years. But we had that, both of us respecting that, both of us trying to make sure we followed certain rules of engagement without either one of us exposing too much. In hindsight, I wish he would have introduced himself, but it worked out. So you want to bring people on, you want to bring suppliers on, making sure that you have people who are sponsoring them, that there are champions for this supplier. You picked this supplier for a reason. I'm assuming in this presentation that you have the right sourcing and supplier selection tools. We can talk about that in a different section, but assuming that you've chosen the right suppliers and you have them on board, these are the things you want to do to really make sure that you can build and sustain that relationship over time. So understand the rules of engagement. That means the initial engagement, and that means over time. So again, what are the rules? What are the written rules? What are the unwritten rules? And what are the patterns of behavior? What are the expectations for that? It's also important early on to establish escalation paths, not because you want to be prepared to go tell on someone or escalate something. But if something does come up, you want to escalate it quickly. You want to escalate it appropriately. You want to know who to get involved because you need both organizations to have support for this relationship. You need more than one person on each side who's working together and who is fostering this relationship. You need to have the technical people involved, maybe the financial people involved, the quality people, maybe production people, maybe the logistics people. Whoever you need to make sure that you've got those contacts established on who's who in both organizations, and then what the escalation paths are so that they know not that there's somebody watching over their shoulder, but there's someone that can help if and when any kind of snag comes up, because you want to resolve those quickly, especially when the relationships are new. So nurturing that relationship means not only setting it up, but making sure that you check in regularly with quarterly business reviews, semi-annual business reviews. Once a year is probably not enough for these relationships, so you want to do that either quarterly or twice a year. It means that you're going to have metrics that you both understand and agree upon to use for the products that you're sharing, that you're making, and that you're acquiring. And that includes not only the measurement, but the measurement techniques that you're going to use. There's nothing worse than having a supplier say, hey, it passed our test, and the customer says, well, it doesn't work in my unit because you're not using the same measurement technique. Make sure you're aligned on that early on. These check-ins and checkups are going to include objective as well as subjective data and criteria. So yes, you want to measure your quality. Yes, you want to measure on-time delivery, but you also want to talk about things like responsiveness. You want to talk about manner of performance. You want to talk about attitudes and willingness to go above and beyond. You want to talk about the teamwork concept that you need on both sides and both of you working together. If you can share information in between these check-ins, that's great. If you have some automated ways to provide feedback that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever, that's more frequent than this, that's very much appreciated on both sides. If that's automated, that's awesome. If it's not automated, then you still need to find a way to give that incremental data. So you don't want to wait. If you have a meeting set up every 6 months, you don't want to wait till the 6-month meeting and say, you know, we're not really very happy because 5 months ago we had a problem that didn't get fixed. That's not the purpose of this. That's not nurturing the relationship. It's making sure that you give incremental indicators and feedback using feedback tools so that they know how they're doing on a continuous basis. You want this to be open communication. You want it to be good feedback. You want it to be frank and candid, but you don't need brutal honesty. If you have someone on your team who says, that's the worst screw up I've ever seen, or I've never seen anybody make a mistake that bad, that's probably fine to share internally. But if this is an important relationship, it doesn't hurt to convey that this is a very serious issue, but you don't have to assign a lot of emotion to it, and you don't have to assign a lot of judgment to it. So if it's a bad problem, then you need to indicate, this is a very bad problem. This is the impact it's having on me. I need you to get on board to fix this. I don't need to judge you or your employees or your lack of performance or. It needs to be frank, open, candid feedback, but not brutal, because brutal won't get you what you need in the long run. You need to follow up and follow through. Those of you who know me know that I'm a sports fan and I like all kinds of sports, but it's important to follow through in sports all the time to get the most out of what you're doing. It's important in business as well. And this again applies to both customers and suppliers. So say what you mean and mean what you say. So don't beat around the bush. When you have trust, you can be open, candid. Say what you mean, and then make sure that you mean what you're saying. So if you agree to do something, if you agree to help, if you agree to a date that's not on the purchase order, then mean that you are going to actually move everything that you can to do that. So make sure that you have that not only on the primary interfaces, but from the whole team. That also means that you have early warning signals. So you as a customer are giving early warning signals if your forecasts are looking too light or too heavy, if you have problems with your customers, if you have other labor issues involved. And as a supplier, you're making sure that your customer knows if you have any material issues or any potential issues, material, labor issues. If your designs are changing, or if the designs are not finalized at any point. Maybe when you start the relationship or you start building a product, these designs are not what you anticipate being there in 6 months. If that's the case, then you need to be honest about that and say, hey, this is the design we have, but we expect that to change because of XYZ. You don't have to share any unnecessary information, but it does help if they understand what the volatility cause is, so that they understand that the design is changing because maybe another component is changing, because your customer may be changing their mind or establishing a different parameter for you. So you don't have to give all of the gory detail, but if they understand the impetus or the drive for those changes, it's going to make more sense, and they're going to be better able to help you incorporate those changes. If you have quality issues, if the supplier has quality issues, the customer has quality issues, you need to share that. And it's not a bad thing to say, hey, we think we have a problem. And then to come back the next day and say, you know what, that issue wasn't related to you. It was something else. We've got it resolved. And as a supplier, the same thing. If you think you have a quality issue, may have passed on product that wasn't perfect to your supplier, to your customer, you want to say, hey, we think we might have a problem. We're doing some things here. We'll keep you posted. As a customer, I never minded being told, hey, we might have a problem, so be aware of this. And then somebody coming back and saying, you know what, never mind. It wasn't what we thought, or we found the root cause and there's no issue, no need to worry. I'm much better with that scenario than with someone saying, well, we didn't think it involved you, so we didn't tell you. We've been working on this for the last couple of weeks, but blah, 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 blah. Don't tell me that. Tell me early that you think you might have a problem, because then I can take action on my side to contain, to suspend, to prevent my company from spending more money that may be going down a rat hole or maybe going into the trash because of some scrap or rework. So along with that early warning, don't surprise people. When you trust each other, you don't surprise them. You talk about what might happen. You talk about the risks. You talk about the issues. You share how issues are affecting you. For example, the pandemic. You let people know, hey, this is having a big effect on our cash flow. This is having an effect here. We are at risk in this area, so you don't surprise the other party. You want a sense of urgency that's appropriate to the situation. Again, customers should not, even real pain in the neck customers, should not expect a supplier to jump every time they ask for anything. If they do, then they're being unreasonable, and it's probably a customer that you really don't want in your life anyway. But when they do have an urgent issue or they have something that is of importance, you need to make sure your team is aware of how to translate that, how to interpret that, and share that information across your organization so that you can best serve each other. Because trust, again, is saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and at the end of the day, actions speak way louder than words. So you can have a supplier who says, well, we're going to fix that and it's going to be okay, and all of that, versus someone who says, hey, it's nailed, it's closed, we can move on. So look at the actions that you are doing, not just the words that you are saying, because at the end of the day, those actions really are going to tell the story of, are you working together? Is that trust there? Is this a supplier that I can rely on? Is this a customer who I can depend on? These things are very important to building this trust and making sure that trust stays in place. You have to be willing to share. You have to be open. You're trying to do kind of a Vulcan mind meld on certain things. Not everything, again, not all the detail, but as much information as is relevant and will help the other party do what they need to do to satisfy their part of the obligation. So share your goals, your objectives, share your business outlook. If your business is going to be bought or sold, or you're looking at acquiring another business, again, you don't have to give information that you shouldn't share or that might be too sensitive. But if you're even making a big acquisition, it's fair to say we're looking at an acquisition. That might take some of our resources to support that. That doesn't say anything that's illegal that the SEC might say, oh, that's insider information. No, it just says, I'm telling you, we have some activities that might take our resources to do other things for some period of time. So we need to be aware of that because we'll have to work on that together. And then if you have growth anticipated with a product, if you have obsolescence anticipated, if you have challenges from your competitors, it's not inappropriate to share that. It's not appropriate to share all of that data all of the time. So you have to look at your situation and you have to figure out what makes the most sense and what is important to share, what is actually proprietary versus confidential. So confidential sharing might be okay, but not sharing proprietary data. Sometimes you need to share proprietary data, but you want to make sure you've got the necessary checks and balances in place, which are usually non-disclosure agreements and maybe some other kind of contract and non-competitive clauses in contracts. One thing that I've always appreciated is when a supplier or a customer tells me they're making changes to the workforce. So if they have layoff coming and they're going to be reducing their force because of other business areas, that's important for me to know. If they're hiring rampantly because they got another contract and they're going to be adding a lot of new people on, then I can expect that maybe some of the good people on my product are going to be working somewhere else, helping with a new product or doing something different. So when you are expecting those changes, it's a good thing to share with your supplier or with your customer if there are major issues and they talk about the workforce and are going to potentially affect the business that you're doing there. It's always important to share technical data and treat that properly. Intellectual property is a big deal, regardless of whether it's owned by the supplier or the customer. Specifications, drawings, you want to share those liberally, but you also want to make sure that they're protected. So if you're the supplier and you have intellectual property or drawings that are patented, then you want to make sure that you're treating those with care, that you're not leaving those lying around on the shop floor, that you're not making lots of copies that might be walking out the back door, going somewhere else. So you want to, and if you have other customers coming through, that those are not exposed. It's not a bad thing to say, hey, we got this great contract and we're working for this company, but you don't want to share more than that kind of thing. I've been in factories where they actually put up curtains around areas when I was in the factory because they did product for my competition, and they didn't want me to see that. Where it's a little annoying because you'd always like to see that. I also felt comforted in the fact that when that competitor came in their factory, they would do the same for my work. So they were protecting me as well as their other customers. And that helps build that trust. You want to make sure that you're sharing capabilities and capacities. If you're a supplier and you're getting a new machine, if you're having extra capacity because another product line is going away, is fading out, or if you have another one that's coming on that's going to take some of your capacity, share that with your trusted partners. It's important that you understand that so you can take advantage of that and get the synergy from sharing that information. It's not about being punitive. It's not about squeezing someone. It's about sharing information so that you can have a good outcome for both parties. There's always sensitive information involved that may not be intellectual property. Things like financial information. Are you making money? Are you meeting your financial goals? If you're an SEC company where you're publicly traded, a lot of that is readily available. If you're not, it's still important to share that. So if you have suppliers who are small businesses and don't want to share that, it's maybe a thing to talk about, and how they can share information with you that lets you know that they are doing well, that they are managing things. You can get some cash flow analyses. You can work with their accountants to get some statements that are from the accountant that explain that yes, they have cash, they have low debt, they maybe have a high debt, but they have it managed because it's from a building and it's a long-term debt versus a short-term. And you can look at some ratios. Debt to equity ratio is an important one. You can look at figures like EBIT and percentages that give you the indications that you need. May not be all the things that you want, but it's asking someone to share something that's very sensitive to them. Cost models are another area. And this is an area that a lot of suppliers guard very closely and hold them very close to the chest. And I always say, the more you share with me about your cost model, the more we can work together on this. So I don't need to know what all of your overheads are, but I do need to know what the percentage is. If it's out of line with other suppliers, then I might ask you to share more so I can help you figure out how to reduce that. And I'm not, suppliers always feel like they're going to lose their profit. As a customer, I don't want to take my supplier's profit away. I'd actually like to increase their profit, but I'd still like to reduce my cost. So the way to do that is to go reduce the cost of labor and the cost of material involved, so that the overheads are applied at a lower rate and there's more room for profit in there. So if we can get that level of trust where we're sharing that information, where they actually think that I will let them keep that profit margin and even try to increase it, then you build trust. Then you get the supplier working with you on ways that they can reduce the cost of the material, the cost of their labor, the hours that it takes to do that. And if you're working on this collaboratively, you're going to get better results. Personnel changes are another sensitive one. So when you are planning a large layoff or even a small layoff or hiring people, again, it's important. But when you're actually changing out personnel on the team, then it's very important. I remember a couple of times where I had a general manager call me and tell me that they had personnel actions taken that day and that there was a reduction of force, and that these two people that had been on my team, my account manager, my quality engineer, whatever their role was, those people were no longer employees and that they would be replaced by this person. That personal call meant a whole lot to me, not because I wanted to know what was going on there, but because I knew that they had prioritized us as a customer. They knew that our working together was important, and they knew that this detail was going to come to light fairly quickly because we would call and that person wouldn't be there. And so we knew what had gone on, not all of the details because we didn't need to know that, but we did need to know that our contact person had changed and it was a result of a reduction in force. And so we were going to move forward. I've had that happen for other reasons where they don't want to talk about while that person is gone, and it really doesn't matter. But it's nice to know that you have someone who's looking out for you, who says, Bob's not here, Susie's going to be taken over, and we're going to just keep moving forward. So, and please help get her up to speed, or she's been on the project, but she's not been in that role. So we appreciate you supporting her in this transition. And I was always quick to say, yes, we will definitely support your transitions, because that's what we do as a customer. And I expect the same from my suppliers. I've done the same when I had personnel changes, when I called a supplier and said, you've been working with Mark, but now you're going to work with someone else, and here's their contact information. They're expecting you to call. Please support them. Sometimes it's because we hired somebody new. Yay, we got some extra help. And guess what? You got the new person. So please help them. There's all of these things that can happen, and you just want to be as accommodating as you can. So share that information. Sometimes you need to share information about your suppliers or your customers. If I'm a customer and I say, hey, I got another supplier who's let me down, so now I have a gap. I have too much of your product. Can you please hold it for a while? Or I have a customer who's going crazy and they need lots more material. So can you speed up your production so we can satisfy our customer, and we'll figure out how to work that together. So it's not always forbidden to talk about those things. The level of detail that you share and the drivers behind that may not always be necessary to the conversation. But again, when you know what's happening with the other party, you're better prepared to help them through it. And then there's a lot of things that are potential issues. So if you see symptoms, if you have indicators that say there's something wrong or there's something going wrong, you want to let the other party know. Once you get to root cause, you want to let them know that too. If it doesn't affect them, you may not share that, but hey, we got to root cause. It's not an issue that affects you. So thanks very much for working with us, but it's resolved and we're moving forward. Corrective actions, the impacts of all those, you want to make sure that you share that. Maybe you have a problem with another line. Maybe you have another problem with another customer. Maybe you have a problem from anywhere. You want to say, these are my corrective actions. This is what we're doing. And here's the impact to our relationship. That's the most important part. What's impacting in our relationship? How long is it going to be impacted? And what is the result of that going to be? And then finally, their vested interest. This is where you want to have this win-win philosophy. You're going to be hopefully sharing resources, sharing systems, portals, different kinds of information so that you're working together on these things. And if you can share resources, that's great. Concurrent engineering products, I've seen some of the best results ever for a product that came from concurrent engineering. Actually utilizing the expertise from the suppliers, having them on board, sometimes on site on a regular basis, so that they were there helping us. Sometimes it's my company as a customer sending people to the suppliers on a regular basis, working on something so that when it evolves and when it develops, it's the best thing possible for both organizations. Sometimes it's sharing other suppliers, maybe component suppliers. Hey, we really have had good luck with this supplier. Why don't you use them? We'd like you to use this component, and guess what? We've got great pricing and we can offer you that pricing from them. I worked for Hewlett-Packard many years ago, and we bought, as Hewlett-Packard, if you think about what they make in terms of printers and computers and whatever, they bought lots and lots of plastic. So they had Hewlett-Packard rates for plastic pellets that they offered all of the HP companies. But they went further and they offered that to other customers of our HP suppliers. So I was making printers, and I would tell my suppliers making these printers, hey, this is our account number. You can get the pricing on your plastic from this company, and you can use that, and you can also use that for your other customers. So it helped my supplier, main supplier of the plastic, because that just added to the plastic they were selling worldwide. It helped my suppliers because they got discounts for other customers on that plastic that they were making, and it helped it helped me as HP do what I needed to do and get the best products to my customers and to manage my costs. So this was a win-win all across the supply chain. So if you can help that, that's a good thing to do. So use those types of things. Logistics providers are another way to match up and use the same people, use the same couriers, use the same warehousing techniques. It's very good if you can attend conferences together. Maybe you just attend them jointly, learning about a new technology or something new. Maybe you can display at a conference and share your product, show the product that you concurrently developed or that your company developed using this other company's technology. And that's a very good way to reinforce those relationships, build that trust. Make presentations at conferences or make presentations at industry events. Those are very important ways to do that. Business reviews, when you're sharing those should be joint. That shouldn't be the customer just doing all the work and making all the presentations. The supplier should also be presenting, and that should be a shared ownership. And that's why when I do those, and when things were not like they are today, we could travel. So we would do every other meeting in person. One time during the year, my supplier would come to me as a customer. Then we would do something virtually by phone, teleconference. Then we would travel to the suppliers. And then again, we would do another teleconference. Now we'd say we're doing Zoom meetings. So we would alternate that with the responsibility going to coordinate to the other party every other time. And then one of the most important things you can do is to celebrate collectively. Make sure that you have project milestones highlighted, and when you get there, have your celebration. Even if you have to have a virtual celebration, you can send things to people's homes if they're working from home. You can send food, things like cupcakes, gift baskets. You can send cards. You can send gift cards. You can do a lot of different things, even if it's virtual. If it's in person, you can do different things. I remember working with some suppliers in China, and we had kind of simultaneous events. One was having breakfast, one was having pizza for dinner, but we had that at the same time. We had the video conference, and we collectively celebrated the project milestone that we achieved together. You want to hold each other accountable, but this is not about being punitive. So you may need some compromise. It doesn't mean that you don't put clauses in your contracts that say these are the penalties, these are the issues. And you want to make sure that you call each other out for not doing what they say they're going to do in the way that it's supposed to be done. But it's not a punitive action until somebody really breaks all the trust and it all falls apart. And then that's a different story. So to engage suppliers in this, again, communicate, communicate, communicate. Be really direct in your requests and the feedback that you need. Candidly share when you have bad news. Again, this is not about punitive things. This is not about beating up suppliers, but this is about being candid, open, and honest. And also listen and seek to understand. This is not about, oh yeah, you've told us that before. This is really listening and listening to the other party and seeking to understand their position, their challenges, their issues. If you're not clear about something, make sure you ask. It's very hard to be responsible if you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing. So if you're not clear, ask. Clear up the questions, clear up the clouds, get that out of the atmosphere, and make sure you're very clear. So again, consequences, penalties, enforce those. If that's what needs to be done, penalties enforced, then you do that. Not as a vengeful retribution, but as what's prudent for your company to protect them and to enforce that relationship and the requirements there that you agreed upon. But you want to actively engage your suppliers. You want to use their strengths and capabilities. Most organizations today are not very vertically integrated. They rely on suppliers a lot for a lot of different capabilities, a lot of capacity. Suppliers are really an extension of the operations function. And so you've got to engage them, utilize their strength, listen to them. They know more about what they're doing in their factory simply because it's their factory. You may be experts on what they're doing, but you don't know their people, you don't know their equipment intimately, you don't know their capacities, you don't know a lot of things about their business. So utilize their strengths. If you picked them and you did a good job sourcing them, then they have those capabilities and strengths that you should be pulling in and counting on. Look for feedback as a customer. So I've told suppliers before, my company is this, and I'm in this situation. In some cases, I worked for aerospace, so defense contractors. We had federal government, and so I would freely admit this makes me a pain in the neck customer. But help me make my customers happy, and let's work on that together. So ask for feedback as to how you're doing as a customer, and be open to changing your strategies, changing your behaviors, changing your approach to certain things. One way to do that is to be willing to share benefits. I've seen suppliers and customers who are hesitant to work together because the supplier is confident that the customer will take all of the savings and not leave the supplier with anything. That's not necessarily a good practice, so don't do that. Make sure that you have a way to share the benefits, not only the cost reductions, but maybe that's an increase in volume, maybe it's an increase in investment that you make by adding people to the team. It can be a lot of different things, but make sure that you have a process to share. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Proactively share the best practices that you've learned, that you're seeing, that you're using. Tailor your processes and procedures that make sense to tailor and change for mutual benefit. If you can do something different that will help your supplier out or will conform to your supplier's processes, then do it. If they can conform to yours, doing something that might benefit you, then they should do that. Again, share cost reductions and other benefits, because that's a collaborative way to do that. If it's win-win truly, which is collaborating, then make sure both parties are winning and continue to win. One way to erode the trust really quickly is to not share those benefits, to try to take all of those, either as a supplier to hoard them and not share them with your customer, or as a customer to try to squeeze every drop of blood from your supplier from that benefit, and then neither party is going to be happy in the long run. So share. Recognize and celebrate progress and success. This sounds trite and it sounds easy to do, but it isn't always something that companies do well. So you want to reward the behaviors that you're trying to reinforce. So reward those behaviors just for the behaviors. Show appreciation when the other party goes above and beyond, and when they're just making a good solid effort, when you know that they're putting the effort in that they need to put in to support this issue or this challenge, then show appreciation to them. And again, there's any number of ways you can do that. You can do that with food is always a good way at work. Cookies, pizzas, dinners. You can do when they're open. You can do movie tickets for the team. Individually, you can let people have gift cards so they can take their family out to dinner, which is always appreciated. You can use both individual and team rewards, which are very good. People sometimes think, oh, I have to reward the whole team. No, you don't. You have to reward the behaviors, the activities, the milestones, the things that you want to reinforce. But if you use one to the exclusion of the other, it's probably not a good thing, but it doesn't mean that you can't do both. So use what makes sense and reward the behavior, and celebrate the milestones. I know there's a better way, because at the end of the day, customers need suppliers and suppliers need customers. This is a symbiotic relationship, and neither one exists without the other for very long. So let's figure out how to make this a synergistic relationship. We have to respect the work as well as the people who do the work. And that's on both sides. So not only internally, but externally. If the supplier has a process that you think is not good, it doesn't mean that you can't point that out, but you still have to respect the work and the people who are doing that. It doesn't mean that you can't make suggestions on how to improve that. Business requires commitments, not marriage pacts. This is not till death do us part, but this is, we are going to work on this together. Again, not every transaction in business requires that, but these suppliers that you value, you need to make sure that they understand you have a commitment to them, and as a supplier, you're making a commitment to your customer. I always say, keep your eyes open and trust but verify. So checking up on things is a reasonable thing to do. Hey, did you get that done? Can you give me a heads up when that thing is shipped or when that change is made, or. Asking for proof can be reasonable. When you say, hey, send me that quote from that supplier. Can you do this? Can you send me that? That is not unreasonable. But micromanaging is not reasonable. If you ask for verification, then that doesn't betray the trust. If you don't trust them to do anything and you're asking for lots and lots of verification, then you're indicating that you don't trust that supplier, therefore they won't trust you, and so then you're going to erode away into an area you don't want to be in. Be flexible. As I said, about the financials for a supplier, they may not give you exactly what you want, so work with them and they should work with you to figure out a format that's going to work for both of you. You might have to change your format a little bit, they might have to change theirs, but if you work on this together collaboratively, you'll find a place to meet in the middle. The level of detail, again, you may not get all of the detail you want, but if you can get enough to establish the trust, maintain the trust, then you should go with that and just keep monitoring that. Be flexible on your schedules and be flexible on things like packaging where you can. If you can't, you can't. But if you can be a little flexible in an area, give that to the other party, because that, again, solidifies the trust and gives you a better foundation to keep building it. Allow time to build trust in a relationship. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't say, oh yeah, we picked you, now we trust you and everything's great. It has to have some time to build up and get into a place where you're both trusting each other. But keep in mind, trust can be broken in seconds. And when it's broken, it's really difficult to repair. It's not, oh, well, that happened yesterday, we'll move on. No, if you actually break that trust, then you're going to have to repair that. And that's going to take a lot more time and a lot more effort. Ernest Hemingway said, the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. And I think that's true. So you find out if you put your trust in the right place. So if you're not putting your trust in the right place, go back and look at your processes and your sourcing processes and everything else. So the benefits when you have trust on both sides is that open, honest feedback promotes growth and improvement for both organizations. When you have the suppliers that you trust and the customers that your suppliers trust, that help is going to be there. You're going to get the help, you're going to get the support when you need it, as you request it. It's not going to be a lot of, well, prove to me that you actually need this extra time. They're going to work with you to do what needs to be done on both sides. Then you're going to have a mutual appreciation of the effort. When you're both making investments in that, then you realize that this is something that is important to both. You've both got some investments made and you want to recoup on those. And so you're going to appreciate the effort the other one does. One, because you're going to understand the extent of that effort a little bit more through the communication, and you're going to recognize the investment that both parties are making. You're going to be able to make quicker, less contentious decisions, and they're going to be better decisions for your organization. Your solutions are going to be lower cost, and you're going to implement them a lot more rapidly when you have suppliers and customers that trust each other and are working together. You're really going to get a high return on the investment that you put into these relationships with carefully selected suppliers. And you're going to get long-term suppliers, and over time, that's going to reduce your cost, your risk, and add a lot more value to both companies. So that's really win-win. So here's my thought for the week: strive to thrive. I thought this was really poignant. A relationship without trust is like a cell phone with no service. All you can do is play games. And playing games is good and it's fun, but you know what? That's not why we're in business. So you need that trust so that you can actually get the work done. There's some suppliers that you can play games with, but when you're playing games with critical suppliers, that's probably a win-lose scenario. Somebody's going to lose and it's not going to end well. and you probably don't have people who are good losers. So don't play games. Make sure that you put that trust into those relationships that are actually going to move your business forward. Next week starts a new month. We're going to talk about the new normal again. So we're still in the middle of the pandemic and we've got a lot of stuff going on, but I thought we'd go back and take a look at what that means, the new normal, or what it could mean for all of us. Supply chain flexibility. I talked a little bit about flexibility today and the trust being flexible. So I'm going to talk about some more of that. I haven't figured out the next 2 weeks, but on the 29th, we're going to have a guest speaker, and I'll let you know a little bit more about that in the upcoming weeks. So as always, if you're interested in further discussion, do the callwithjane.com. And Purple Link will help your business because there's a better way to reduce the cost and the risk. And finally, if you haven't signed up for our webinars and you would like to have you or your employees get certified, become a certified professional in supply management, we're doing 2 classes this fall, Exam 1 and Exam 3. Exam 1 is on Thursdays, and it's going to be during the day, 9:30 to 11 here. And the reason for that is because I've got some people in different time zones who wanted to do that. And then Exam 3 starts on September 2nd. That's Wednesdays, and that's going to be 6:30 to 8 because of some other obligations I have on Wednesday evening. So 6:30 to 8 Pacific time, and I hope you sign up. So if there's any questions or comments, I'll take those. Other than that, we're going to call it a day.